Hello and welcome. You're watching Beyond World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour. The United States has seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker in an operation in North Atlantic and has seized another Venezuela-linked vessel in the Caribbean as part of a blockade of Venezuelan oil exports. Moscow demands that the United States should allow for the swift return of the seized tanker's Russian crew. The American Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that the meeting with Denmark, which requested talks after President Donald Trump's threats to Greenland, has been scheduled next week. A large crowd cheers in the streets of Abadan, a city in Iran's southwestern Elam province. This as protests enter the 11th day, with the death toll now reportedly having gone up to 38. The Syrian government demands the Kurdish fighters to leave the Aleppo neighborhoods. This as the army begins shelling them after its deadline for civilians to leave expired. And India's GDP is expected to grow at a pretty healthy rate of 7.4% in the current financial year, up from 6.5% in the previous year. Now, these growth numbers are very significant as they reflect an increased growth in the fiscal year in which the Americans have slapped 50% tariffs on India, including a 25% penalty for purchasing Russian oil. And Brazil's far-right former president Jair Bolsonaro is taken to a hospital after hitting his head in a fall in prison, where he's serving 27 years for leading a failed coup d'etat. And electricity has been restored to southwestern Berlin after a suspected arson attack on a power station by leftist activists caused a blackout for tens of thousands of households on the 3rd of January. This, of course, was the longest outage in the German capital since the end of the Second World War. All right, so let's start this broadcast with some breaking inputs that have in fact come in, where the American President Donald Trump has expressed his doubts over the NATO alliance. On his Truth Social post, the American president has said that Washington was paying for the NATO bills since they were at 2% GDP. Furthermore, he said, and I quote him here, "Without my involvement, Russia would have all of Ukraine right now. Remember also, I single-handedly ended 8 wars, and Norway, a NATO member, foolishly chose not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is that I saved millions of lives. Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States, and I doubt that NATO would be there for the United States if we really needed them." Now, Trump's renewed threats to seize Greenland from the NATO member Denmark have rattled the transatlantic alliance. Leaders of 6 NATO nations joined with Mette Frederiksen, the Prime Minister of Denmark, to issue a remarkable joint statement pushing back against Donald Trump's assertions that the United States should take over Greenland. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, this is an interesting statement by Donald Trump on the NATO military alliance. This is something that he said over and over again. Is there a decision by Donald Trump that we expect on the NATO military alliance?
It's hard to imagine that President Trump would go as far as making a decision one way or the other regarding NATO as being part of NATO. But the part that he says that I doubt that NATO would be with us if anything should happen to us, I mean, The biggest incident in recent history, in contemporary history, is after the United States was attacked on 9/11 and the way NATO allies rallied behind the president. And so it appears that this is in reaction to the statement that NATO member states have made regarding the Trump administration's desire to acquire Greenland. But nonetheless, it is concerning. And it is, again, very on brand that it appears that the Trump administration and the president himself seems to want to go at things alone, unilaterally, as opposed to a multilateral setting. But it's hard to imagine that they've made any kind of decision regarding NATO. It seems more as a reaction to how NATO member states have reacted. Some of them even, like France, for example, the way in the manner that Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro was brought to the United States, for example.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
What's up, guys? D7 back at you. Urgent message here on things that are said to be going down this week. We've got a lot of action. As you guys most likely know, the United States swooped in and got Maduro out of Venezuela, and they are turning this entire hemisphere into a war front. For people that are sleeping on it, I've been warning about it for months and months and months. I mean, on day one, Trump came in and signed an executive order saying that we were under an emergency, a state of emergency because of cartels. And we went pretty much all year last year without any moves being made in terms of that state of emergency. Well, now we've surrounded the entire Caribbean. All of Central America is surrounded and the threats are flying. And we got stuff popping off rather quickly here that people need to pay attention to. We just chased down and seized a Russian vessel in the Atlantic that turned around and tried to head back toward Russia. It was said that it didn't even have a Russian emblem on it, and they painted one on it and then was seeking Russia's protection. It's said to be Iranian linked. So they've seized that. Russia has a submarine that they just sent into the area. And we know that they're always creeping all over the place anyway. But they are sending military assets to the Atlantic, stalking our military that just snatched up one of their boats. This is as close as it gets to confrontation. We just had 16 vessels in an organized manner break the blockade and bust through it, going different directions to test the U.S. military. Now, the Chinese is rolling out their Navy. They're rolling out their Navy because they're saying they're going to send military down right next to our country to protect their vessels that are going in and out of Venezuela to get oil. Chinese Navy being rolled out now. Okay, the largest on the planet, by the way, at this point, is what we're about to have to deal with. Trump turning his guns toward Colombia, saying that they're running cocaine mills in there. And the guy is running his mouth to Trump, saying, oh, come and arrest me and put me in orange pajamas and all this. He's going to get it. I'm telling you right now, we're going to make a military move on Colombia. It's coming down. It's going down. There's no way that you go down there under the guise of drugs and you skip Colombia. Where, out of Trump's own mouth, the reporter asked him, does that mean we're striking Colombia next? He goes, sounds good to me. You bet your ass. Colombia's getting it, unfortunately. Dude, look at what's happening. Huge war fronts all around us. He then turns to Cuba and says, Cuba, the leadership's down there running their mouth. And I'll be honest, they did just sever their lifeline. They were living all this time in shambles, but barely living off the supply of Venezuelan money and backing. Now that that lifeline's been cut, they're done. And the leader of Cuba is like threatening us all out. Just straight up just saying like, we're going to war with you. And they're right there, less than 100 miles off the coast, and are allied with China and Russia. Right there, open threats. That's another one that they could take down and they're probably going to confront. That's two leaders still sitting here, right in our neck of the woods that they can make a move on. Then, Mexico. He says, I don't even know what we're going to do about them. Then, Greenland threatens to take it. Rubio coming out saying, we're going to purchase it. Greenland kind of responding like, we're not for sale. And then Trump's like, well, we'll use military force if need be. Did you talk about shaping up for huge war? You've never seen anything like this, especially on the home front and in this Western Hemisphere. And then let's not forget, we now have Iran throwing the open threat out there saying that they're about to preemptive strike us or Israel. You don't think that there's not going to be blowback somehow after all this, all these countries, all this out of nowhere? Mr. Peace, huh? The Gentile Messiah. Yeah, well, dude, it's going down. And there's an injection of money that's been happening with these precious metals and all this stuff that's going on, man. I know you see it. They just put up a wall on silver to deflect it and to bring it back down into the upper 70s because it was charging. All the other global markets are sky high, except for the rigged paper markets. And you could see, I tweeted it out on X. I put a post out. You could see on the graph the wall that they put up. It's heavily manipulated. On Friday, the contracts expire en masse for the U.S. and China. China's doing it too. This is a setup on all of us globally. They are about to reset everything. And they're going to do it probably in the midst of huge war. As always, that's the best thing to blame it on. And it's probably what's about to happen. So, with what's going on, man, I expect market shifting, especially when the manipulation is like popped. And there's going to be heavy repercussions here, man. Look, you don't go around messing with this many countries and there not be any blowback. My biggest concern is there's going to be huge blowback. Like they put the lights out on us. Staged or not, it doesn't matter. Like, there's going to be something, even if it's scripted. In the script, you would write, well, the enemy would have to hit the United States at some point, and we will get hit. It's destined. Manly P. Holden wrote the book on it, The Destiny of America. It's all there, man. And we know that this year is the beginning phase of the reset period. We know this. With the Mar-a-Lago Accord and everything else, people, you got to quit sleeping on this stuff. This is major. People that want to sleep on it, guess what? They're bringing the war to you. And I was just looking at an article where they were comparing what states have military force. You're talking about all the guns in America and what we got, which is good. But that if there was an invasion, boats just started coming up through the Gulf and all this, what's going to happen? And they were comparing the Texas State Guard to the Venezuelan army. But it's time to get our state guards up, our state militias, not national, state. Who's with me, man?
The first China-led BRICS joint naval exercise is due to start on Friday in South African waters. The theme of the drill is joint actions to ensure the safety of shipping and maritime economic activities. BRICS originally consisted of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, but has expanded to include Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia and the UAE. South Africa has not specified which countries will attend, but media reports say Russia and Iran will take part. The exercise has been held before, but never under the name of BRICS. The change will likely concern Western nations as BRICS launches its first defense cooperation.
A senior Israeli judge said to be involved in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption case was killed after a vehicle driving off a road came on a major highway and then plowed into his motorcycle. Now, Judge Benny Sagi, the president of the Beersheba District Court, died at the scene following the collision on Route 6 in southern Israel on Sunday. An investigation has now been launched into the circumstances of this crash, and according to the Israeli Emergency Medical Service, Magen David Adom, the medics and the paramedics who arrived at the site found Sagi with multiple injuries and no signs of life. The paramedics have described the incident as shocking, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Over the past year and a half, Sagi had served as president of the Beersheba District Court, having arrived from Tel Aviv District Court. His funeral took place on Monday. The President Isaac Herzog has said that he was shocked and pained by the loss, praising Sagi as a brilliant jurist known for his integrity and professionalism. The Supreme Court President Isaac Amit said that the judiciary was dismayed by the tragedy, describing Sagi as a man with a huge heart who was deeply respected by colleagues. Now, Sagi was presiding over the Netanyahu corruption case. In December last year, Netanyahu took the stand for the first time since asking the president for a pardon in his long-running corruption trial. Netanyahu was indicted in 2019 on charges of bribery, fraud and breach of trust, all of which Netanyahu has denied. The trial began in 2020 and involves 3 criminal cases, and Netanyahu's lawyers have requested for a pardon from President Isaac Herzog, arguing that frequent court hearings impact his ability to govern and that a pardon will serve the national interest. They've also maintained that the president has the authority to grant it on the grounds of public interest.
Breaking news now out of the United States, where a woman has been fatally shot by an immigration officer in Minneapolis in what federal officials claim was self-defense.
No! Oh my God! What the
Live to 9's US correspondent Jonathan Kersley. Jonathan, the city's mayor has described the act as reckless and unnecessary.
Jane, what you've got right now is 2 sides of the story saying 2 completely different things, and a very precarious and tense situation on the streets of Minneapolis itself. This shooting under the immigration enforcement procedures that were taking place in the city took place around about 8:30 this morning. You can see very icy cold conditions there. Now, what witnesses have said is that the woman was unarmed, that she was driving off, and then a officer fired through the window, that car then careering into a pole, and the woman sadly passing away at the scene. In the wake of that, we heard from the Department of Homeland Security saying that this was a woman who was using her vehicle in a dangerous manner, essentially trying to weaponise the car. It was described by Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, as an act of domestic terrorism from somebody who was a known rioter. However, the local mayor has come out describing the federal government's version of events as BS and then went further.
To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
An extraordinarily strong message from the mayor, but does this add fuel to the fire on the ground? And you can see these live images now from Minneapolis, where you've got police blocking off roads, crowds are on either side of the street there. This taking place around about a kilometre or so from where African-American George Floyd was killed under an act of police brutality back in 2020. So different circumstances, very same city, but right now what you're looking at here is a tense situation on the ground, Jane.
Thank you,
Meanwhile,
Jonathan.
let's also tell you about other developments that we are tracking. Israel is taking a step that could potentially change the map and also the future of West Asia by pushing ahead with a massive settlement project east of Jerusalem. Israel is effectively preparing to slice the West Bank into 2. Experts are warning this is not just construction. It's a move that could actually block any realistic path to a Palestinian state and basically lock the conflict into place for generations. A new Israeli government tender cleared the final hurdle for the E1 development, inviting bids for more than 3,400 housing units. A watchdog group, Peace Now, has said work could start within weeks, calling it an accelerated effort to cement permanent control over strategic land. By advancing it, Israel is signaling it intends to build despite international opposition. Most world governments still view settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank as illegal and a direct obstacle to peace. What makes E1 such a major issue is geography. It stretches from Jerusalem deep into the West Bank, linking settlements and cutting across the territory. Palestinians hope to use for a continuous, workable state. Experts are warning that once constructed, reversing it will be nearly impossible, and thus a 2-state plan could become mostly symbolic. Israel captured the West Bank in 1967, and now more than 500,000 settlers live there. There has been a surge of attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank, especially in recent months. During October's olive harvest, Israeli settlers across the territory launched an average of 8 attacks daily, the most since the United Nations Humanitarian Office started collecting data nearly 20 years ago. The United Nations, meanwhile, has now warned that decades of discrimination and segregation of Palestinians in the West Bank by Israel was intensifying, and in the process, creating a kind of quote-unquote apartheid system. While the West Bank dispute unfolds, Israel faces another internal crisis over military service and who carries the burden. In Jerusalem, meanwhile, a massive protest by ultra-Orthodox or Haredi Jews against conscription turned deadly when a bus drove into the crowd, killing a teenage boy. Police detained the driver, opened an investigation as chaotic video captured hundreds fleeing in panic. In fact, the demonstration highlighting a long-running issue. Ultra-Orthodox students traditionally avoid compulsory service, saying army life threatens their religious identity as such. Many Israelis arguing that exemption is unfair, especially now as the military stretches across multiple fronts in West Asia and struggles to fill up its ranks. The IDF saying they urgently need about 12,000 new recruits. At the same time, around 80,000 Haredi men between the ages of 18 and 24 remain eligible but reportedly do not enlist. The dispute once again pressuring Prime Minister Netanyahu, who depends on ultra-Orthodox political partners while facing a military manpower crisis.
خدای الان توقی
Iran's deadly protests have now entered into their 11th day. Clashes in southwest Iran have resulted in 2 more deaths and injuries to 30 others. The Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has ordered the security forces not to crack down on any economic protesters, even as the unrest continues to spread across the country. The directive was confirmed after a cabinet meeting where Vice President Mohammad Jafar Ghaempanah said that the president had clearly instructed the authorities to avoid using force against peaceful demonstrators. Pezeshkian, however, drew a sharp line between the protests and violence, and officials said that those carrying weapons attacking the police stations or military sites will be treated as rioters and not protesters.
Those who today come into the streets to take part in riots, or lead them, or support them, or assist them, in light of this explicit declaration of position by the criminal Zionist regime, and likewise by the criminal President of the United States, and the issues they raised, that if anyone comes into the streets for riots or to create insecurity or supports them, then no excuse remains for them.
Now, the exiled son of Iran's toppled Shah, Reza Shah Pahlavi, has urged the Iranian armed and security forces to side with the people. He is calling for more protests amidst unrelenting unrest in the country, triggered by the deepening distress or economic hardship.
I am sharing my first call with you today and invite you all to begin chanting at 8 p.m. this Friday and Thursday, whether in the streets or even from your homes. This is a direct message addressed to Iran's armed and security forces, you who wear a military uniform to defend the Iranian nation and who are now facing a historic choice.
Now, this comes as social media videos from the 5th of January are showing clashes between the protesters and security forces in Sari in Mazandaran province. The separate images from Iran Sheher in Sistan and Balochistan province show the protesters setting fire to statues of Iran's first supreme leader, Ruhollah Khomeini, and his successor, Ali Khamenei. A rare and also a highly symbolic act of defiance. The Iranian authorities have not published an official death toll. However, an American-based human rights activist news agency has reported the death toll to be about 38. It claims that 34 of those who have been killed apparently are protesters, while 2 were affiliated with security forces, and about 2,000 people apparently have been detained. The group relies on an internal activist network and has been fairly accurate in its reporting in the past. The protests were triggered by anger over the rising cost of living. The wave began on the 28th of December with a shutdown by the merchants in the Tehran Bazaar, a national economic hub, and it has since spread to other areas. Students, of course, joined in, and according to rights groups, over the past 10 days, at least about 285 locations in 92 cities across 27 provinces have witnessed protest gatherings. Internationally, the crisis is drawing some sharp reactions. The American President Donald Trump has warned that Washington could step in if the Iranian security forces fire on the protesters. Separately, Australia has issued a level 4 travel advisory for Iran, and it has also cautioned the citizens to avoid large public gatherings by citing severe security forces' response to the protesters. It's also suspended its embassy operations in the country. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said that he identifies with the Iranian people and their aspirations for freedom. But Tehran has, of course, pushed back. Iran has warned that any American interference will plunge the entire region into complete chaos.
Here is a shocking message from Yemen, and it is directly at Venezuela. In the middle of global chaos, with Venezuela's president captured, a voice from the Red Sea, it spoke out. Not a world leader, by the way, not a diplomat, a Houthi official, bold and fearless. Let me quote what he said. Venezuela must learn from the Houthis. America respects only force. Now, this is not just words. This is geopolitical fire. Let me tell you who are these Houthis first. The Houthis are the Yemeni armed group that has been fighting for years against the US and allied forces backed by Iran. They have attacked ships in the Red Sea, disrupted shipping lanes, and challenged some of the world's most powerful militaries. Now they are sending a loud and clear warning across continents. Let me tell you what they officially said. Well, the Houthi message, it was clear and dramatic as well. Venezuela should learn how we confront the US. Force is the language that they understand. If you want to defend your leader, you must show some strength. Well, this is not diplomacy. This is provocation meant to make the world sit up and take a notice. But you know why are Houthis saying this? Well, they have experience with the US, first of all. They have faced American military strikes before and they survived. They believe that their resistance is a lesson others can actually learn. Second of all, they want a bigger fight. This is not just Yemen's fight anymore. By referring Venezuela, they are linking Latin America to the Middle East, creating a global narrative, and that too of the resistance. Thirdly, they want to inspire others. Their words, they are warning. You are not alone. Confrontation works. The US only respects power. Now, what this means globally, that is important. This particular statement, it is dangerous, it is provocative, and it is dramatic. It ties conflicts across continents. It signals that extremist groups are watching Venezuela closely. It suggests that the US power can be challenged, at least in rhetoric. World powers will be watching every single move here, and in the end, the Houthis are sending a bold message. When the world sees weakness, it invites risks. Whether Venezuela follows this logic or not, one thing is clear: power, strength, and perception now drives the global politics, and words like these, they can echo across continents.